Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. Veterans Day. We recognize like my father who served in
My
Korea,
father too, yeah.
and all the veterans who are alive or who perished. Who are no longer living. We honor them today. And we'll start with our pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
So let's talk baseball finances. Jan loves it. Jan loves to talk about finances. I like it once in a while, but Jan loves it. But he lives in the financial world, so I get it. So Jerry Blevins had an interesting post that was basically killing the baseball qualifying offer, right? And you saw like yesterday, there's a list of like 20 guys with qualifying offers. Sometimes the player has the offer, sometimes the team holds the option. But my point is, and Jerry didn't want to answer me, and it's fine. Maybe he's too busy. But the point is, Jan, if the qualifying offer is hated so much by players, why do agents still use it and have it in the contract? Like I would just say, let's not even bother. If you don't want me for that next year, I'm not going to help you out. But let's talk about the qualifying offer. Like it's always a big deal.
So, I do like finances, but I don't talk about it only in the prism of where it impacts teams, because clearly with salary caps, it's a major component, or luxury taxes. We know as our team, one of the 5 teams that breached the cap and the impact on the draft picks down the road.
Yeah.
So remember, if the international draft had gotten approved, that qualifying offer was going out the door. That was part of the condition of if we got it, because the draft wasn't approved. And again, Major League Baseball has their proverbial heads up their proverbial rear ends when it comes to this thing. Oh, yeah. In essence, that was one of the negotiation points when the CBA was signed last year to get them to sign. 19 players, $19.65 million goes up annually. Remember, if a player declines and he signs elsewhere, the team that basically signs him will give up a draft pick. That was the whole point with Michael Conforto last year, why the Mets offered it to him. So to a certain extent, you can think of it as a win-win and a lose-lose, right? Tyler Anderson, $19.65 million. If you want to bet on yourself for 1 year and you think that you can parlay that into a longer-term deal down the road, give me $19.65 million, because I'm probably not making that as part of my AAV moving forward. But if you're not willing to take that bet on yourself, and again, Chris Bassett's going to get a longer-term deal, Jacob deGrom's going to get a longer-term deal, Brendan Nimmo's going to get a longer-term deal. The list goes long in terms of how many guys get longer-term deals. It's a way of teams being able to maintain a level of quote-unquote ownership, but also being able to recoup an asset if that player leaves. Now, again, remember, you acquire a player during the year, he's not eligible for a qualifying offer. He had to be on your team for the entire year. So there are some components associated with being able to give a qualifying offer also.
So like Taijuan Walker, as an example, last 2 years, it was 150 innings a year, although availability late in the year, sometimes not great. So he turns down the 19.65, which is more than he is going to make on an AAV.
No, he didn't. They didn't offer him a QO. They didn't offer.
Oh, that's right. The Mets didn't offer it to him.
They didn't offer. The Mets decided not to, which I thought was mildly surprising, unless they were concerned he was going to take the 1 year 19.65 as opposed to trying to get the multi-year offer from somebody else.
That's just like what the Yankees did with Jameson Taillon. They didn't even offer him.
Well, you're not giving him $19 million for a year if he accepts it, Mike.
Well, here's the thinking on this one. I think if I were the Mets, I would have done it, because if I'm giving 14 to Carrasco, I certainly could give 19 to Walker based on merit. Walker's going to get a 2-year deal, but he's probably only going to get 15 a year. So my point is, you would think if he, with the Mets, the way their staff is and needing some pitching, because it's not a guarantee of deGrom coming back, even though I think he will, I'd have done it. I don't know why they didn't do it.
That's why I tweeted yesterday. I thought it was surprising. I have the same view. Like, I understand the concern from a salary perspective and what your overall luxury tax is going to be and your impact on your draft positions. But the last 2 years, the Mets have substantively improved their farm system, including this year with getting Williams and Parada. If they give up a pick down the road because it'll be back-to-back or 3 years, Cohn doesn't care. Until you have an international draft, he's going to make a full-blown push to sign guys that way. And there's a couple of guys who are posting right now who are coming into Major League Baseball, the 2 guys who are available, the pitcher and the hitter, who he's going to make a major push for. So
it depends how much international money they have built up. I don't think they have a ton.
No, that's only for the draft. You can still sign guys that are posting now.
This is the free agent guys.
Remember, it's a flat amount you can give them, but all depends on down the road once they sign it. Supposedly, I believe the outfielder is one of them. The outfielder or the pitcher has talked about wanting to be in a big market team.
Yeah, the outfielder, though, seems to want to go where did he say? He actually Colorado. He actually picked out Colorado.
They have good schools there right here.
The question
According to Mike Hampton, they have good schools, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, that's true. The question that I have, and it's a high elevation too. The question that I have is with DeGrom, the rumors about Texas. I mean, honestly, unless Texas is backing up a Brinks truck, I don't know any pitcher that would go to that ballpark. Just like, I mean, Nimmo going to Colorado makes sense. He can maybe hit for power numbers better than he can in New York. I get that. But I don't. And
he's closer to home where he comes. He's closer to home where he comes from in Wyoming, right? That's another reason why Seattle has supposedly been rumored. Seattle's also been rumored as
close to Wyoming, though.
I said closer. I didn't say close. I said closer than New York is. I mean, again, look, I said, you asked me like 4 months ago, Mike. I told you 4 months ago, my two sleeper teams when it came to the DeGrom, one was the Rangers, and one I know is very much a long shot is the Devil Rays, right? I don't think they're going to spend the money, but they've been willing to be aggressive at times where needed, and they do at times need a top of the rotation guy, even though they mix and match and have openers. I said right away the Rangers are looking to make a major splash. I'm expecting Texas to be in the mix. Obviously, Atlanta's been rumored. I think part of Atlanta depends on where they end up landing with Dansby Swanson, who they offered kind of an under-market deal. But if you look at all the guys they've signed over the last 3-4 years, they've gotten all those guys, I don't call it on the cheap, but on the cheaper, like Michael Harris and Spencer Strider. And all those guys have come at a discount because they've signed them early on as opposed to waiting until they're eligible for arbitration.
Terry's question here. I don't rule out the possibility that, I don't know if there's anything to the fact that if DeGrom leaves, that the Mets would go after Verlander.
I hope not. That would be a bad idea.
Now, if you remember before,
he's a 40-year-old healthy guy. What does that mean?
But if you remember, while he was recovering from Tommy John and he became a free agent, the Yankees were in on him. The Tigers were in on him. He's going to go where he gets paid the most. Maybe it'll be Houston.
He is going to go where he's paid the most. Here's what I would say about DeGrom, though. The Texas situation, the Braves, all of that, all this reminds me of Bernie Williams with the Red Sox, right? He met with them in the hotel. He found out what they would pay him, and then he went and signed with the Yankees. And I think that's what DeGrom's agent is doing.
Russ, he brought the offer back to George, and George, I'm not going to get outbid by the fucking Red Sox. That's
right, and I think that's what DeGrom is doing with the Mets.
I think from a mindset perspective, though, right? So I'll touch on Verlander after. Bernie was a career Yankee. He had it ingrained in him. I don't get the sense with DeGrom, even though he's been a career Met, that he has that same affinity for the organization to a certain extent. I'm not sure, given you never hear the comments of, he talked about wanting to be a career Met, but then was more than happy to walk out the door. In terms of Verlander declining, look, he had a 1-year, $25 million offer. He's going to far exceed that offer. He's going to get a multi-year deal from somebody, and he's probably going to get more than $25 million a year from somebody based upon.
He'll get in the 30s. He'll get in the 30s.
But he's asking for $45 million from the Mets. I mean, he started less than 30 starts.
The Mets can't pay Verlander $45. Scherzer, I get it. Verlander, no way. But here's what I would say about the DeGrom lifetime Met thing. He has done nothing to let anybody know that he doesn't want to be there. He loves it there. He's talked about it a million times. In this era, nobody is ever going to say, I'm going to play here for life and kill their bargaining power. I think we all know that. And he's older. He wants to get his one big payday. I get it.
And last thing, there's been little news on the Judge front, but it sounds like, the Yankees will pay him. They'll pay him. They'll make him the highest paid player in Major League Baseball. But the talk is they want to get it done now, like in the next couple weeks, because then they have to plan out what they're going to do for the rest of the regular season. If it drags out like into December, then I think the chances decrease that he comes, that they get him.
8-3-20, Mike?
Yes. $40 million a year for 8 years.
I forgot. I had one more last thing that Jan will enjoy. I think the Mets made a big mistake. I don't care how much money Stephen Cohen has by diverting funds again, deferring money.
Bobby Bonilla.
Edwin Diaz could be the next Bobby Bonilla. You never know. And it's funny because you would think because of that situation, and teams do it. Listen, there's plenty of guys on deferred money, but I just feel like the Mets should have learned from that, and they didn't, so they could bypass some of the luxury tax. I think it's a bad move.
Next year, it's $5 million for 5 years. 5 years, but look, I understand why they did it. It reduces the AV down to 18.5 mil or so, maybe a little less than that. I didn't have a problem with them. It's not a 25-year thing. And B, I'm tired of hearing Bobby Bonilla, as you said. There are so many teams. Do me a favor. Go look up what the Washington Nationals are paying Max Scherzer down the road in terms of deferments.
Oh, yeah. Listen, Brett Saberhagen's still making money.
He's the convenient guy to complain about. It was a stupid move. And look, nobody's wiping the smile off his face, quote unquote, as he told Bob Clappish in the locker room that year.
Okay, so next spring training, I'll look forward to Aroldis Chapman and Zach Britton being in the Mets bullpen. Hello, Hockey World.
You wish.
Today, no, they're both free agents. So they're, and
I know, Mike. You wish.
Bucks love for ex Yankees. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, November 11th, 2022.
I'm Russ Cohen, and I'm still in Michigan for those asking.
I'm Jan Levine, as Mike said. Thank you to all the veterans for their service.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Eklund will be joining us in a few minutes. We start with really bad news for the Columbus Blue Jackets, which it's just been bad news from the very beginning. First, the injury to Line A. They've gotten off to a bad start. Merzlikins has been in and out of the lineup because of health reasons. Their goaltending hasn't been very good. Their record is atrocious at the bottom of the Metropolitan Division, and now they lose their best defenseman for the season. Zach Werenski suffered a separated shoulder and a torn labrum. He's out for the year. Russ, it's 15 games into the season? It makes more sense for them to get into the Connor Bedard sweepstakes again.
No, it doesn't. They've spent money. I was on a show just now with Stick to Hockey with Jody Shelley and Jason Martinez, and we were talking about, Werenski being gone, not like gone for the year. Yeah. And he still felt like, Shelley still felt like they could get on a little bit of a roll. He didn't know about playoffs, but he said, hey, they could certainly win 4 or 5 in a row. He feels like they can do that. Didn't talk about Jiricek filling the role either, because the trip to Finland killed them, right? Like that, anytime you go overseas like that, if you're on the losing end of things, it's really bad for your club. Like you get that hangover and everything else. He felt like part of that was that. Yesterday was kind of a heroic win because not only was Werenski out, but Gabranson went out. In the third period, they only had 4 defensemen. And then when the Flyers had the extra guy in the ice, Gavrikov went out for a couple shifts. So they only had 3 defensemen at that point. So that was sort of, I think, a moment where they banded together. And so I'm not going to give them the death knell yet because – they do have some young players that could play. We talked, about David Jiricek. I don't think he should be on the top pairing, but you certainly could bring him up from Cleveland and let him play some more. All those things could keep them competitive. And right now, they're not at the hardest part of the schedule. So if they could at least get their stuff together, I don't think they should go in the Bedard sweepstakes.
Jan.
So, look, this is the second time I think in 3 years Werenski's been injured, and taking away your number one blue liner clearly has a material impact. The Finnish trip was a bust, partly because of the opponent they played. They went against the Colorado team that's got offense up and down the lineup everywhere you turn. And Mika Rattanen said, "Ooh, I'm home. Let me go have some fun while I'm home." Similar to Patrick Laine, right? So, look, I think Jake Bean's going to get a bit more power play time. I'm not going to put Jiricek on the first pairing, but I think you're going to try him a little bit on the power play just to ease him in, to kind of build him up, because you're expecting him to be a stalwart within, if not next year, by the year afterwards. Clearly a major loss. This franchise, unfortunately, with the Kivlinkins, obviously the incident that happened, unfortunately, with his passing. They last year had a little bit of a pall over it because of it. This year, they signed Johnny Gaudreau. You had Kent Johnson, who was supposed to be there all year long. You went into the season with lots of hope, and clearly started off not particularly well. Then it's carried on, but the offensive talent is there. Right, if you think about it, between the pipes, Korpisalo and Merzlikins is a pretty decent 1-2. The question becomes: do you have enough on your blue line to make up for the loss of your number one blue liner?
Yeah, Johnson started off well. And Shelley likes what he sees out of him. That could add another dynamic, another dimension to their offense. And look, Korpisalo had his stuff together yesterday. Merzlikins had a terrible start to the season, so maybe this is an opportunity for Korpisalo again.
Well, okay, Merzlikins was hurt. Korpisalo was recovering from a shoulder injury, so it was all on Tarasov, their prospect.
For a little while, yeah.
And I don't think he's ready yet, so that's one of the contributing factors for them starting slow. So I mean, okay, but now okay. Can Adam Boquist quarterback the power play? Yes.
Him or Jake Bean, yeah.
Is Andrew Peak, is Bean, is Gavrikov, are they good defensemen? Yes. But you're missing your horse, your linchpin. And I don't know. I mean, they've already dug themselves a pretty big hole. They're 4-9 right now. They're not like so far out of it that they can't climb their way back. But let's just say it doesn't look good that they have. At the same time, they're slumping. That now they lose their best defense.
Well, we can't say they're slumping. Like they won, they got a big win against the Flyers. They got 3 goals early, and they were heroic. I said heroically held on which they did because they were out. Those defensemen, which was a big deal. Now let's see. I mean, I liked what I saw out of Peak yesterday. Peak is turning into a good defenseman. Gavrikov can do a lot. Gavrikov is a very underrated defenseman in this league. And if he goes on, Shelley wasn't sure if they could re-sign him or not. If they can't, there's a lot of teams that'll want Gavrikov. I'm sure the Rangers would be in on that because they're having their own defensive problems. But end of the day, I'm not going to count Columbus dead yet.
I mean, okay, like that sort of rings like Eknot considering the Islanders dead when they were.
Don't compare me with Ek. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. One of the interesting
shot across the bow with him not here yet. Wait, you say that in front of him also. Never mind.
I would, and I do. I'm hopped up on the smoothie.
There we go. And then are you hopped up on those pierogies that you posted?
The pierogies were great.
They look luscious. Russ, I have to say, I automatically, once I saw those, did a search best pierogies in Buffalo. Because I was like, oh no, now I'm making a trip to the Polish Villa tonight.
Yeah, I've got a pierogi place like right around the corner from me on the college campus, but the smell is so much different from this place than that place. That place seems okay, but it's not like this place. This is a true Polish restaurant that you
haven't had them store some so you can freeze it and put it in.
No, listen, I eat Mrs. T's. I eat the ones from Aldi. I like pierogies, so it doesn't matter.
Pierogies and potato latkes.
The key is just pan fry them all. If you pan fry them, no matter whose they are, they're pretty good.
All right, sour cream.
Sour cream, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's definitely sour cream. Okay, so the most interesting game last night, at least for people in my neck of the woods, was the Vegas Golden Knights visiting the Buffalo Sabres, and Jack Eichel stuck it right up the hiney of the Buffalo Sabres with a hat trick and an assist in a 7-4 victory at KeyBank Center. Now he took immense pleasure.
First words I heard today were Heine of the Buffalo Sabres. Just throw that out there.
He took immense pleasure after being lustily booed the first time he was in town, and then acting hurt about it after the game. And today or yesterday was booed every time he touched the puck, which is normal hockey fare. But he scores a goal in the third period, and he does the are you not entertained, Russell Crowe from?
I'm going to tell you, we talked about in Michigan, I was talking to some media people about the Eichel return. The game hadn't started yet, so we were just talking about Eichel in general, and I don't feel the same way that some of them do, but man, Eichel has now become a true polarizing figure in this league because there is a lot of feeling about, hey, he should have just shut up and played hockey. And not as far as the surgery goes before that, before he asked for a trade. But it's like, I see both sides. I still don't have a problem with Eichel, but I guess, maybe fans saw more of that than I did, and that's why they were going to boo him. I wouldn't have booed him.
The bottom line with Eichel is, that surgery he had, didn't Travis Konechny have the same surgery basically?
No, Tyler Johnson.
No,
It feels like a Tommy John type thing, like to me, like the Tommy John surgery of baseball. That it's it's new. I mean, at one point the Tommy John surgery was new, right? And people were it was risky, but it worked.
But that's not. See, that's okay. That's not.
But it was before that I think he really pissed people off more than I thought.
Okay, no, I think that the Buffalo fans were on Eichel's side up to a point. Before he got traded, he understood the organization at that point was a joke, that he had wasted 5-6 years of his career because the team was spinning their wheels. He wanted out, but he also wanted the surgery. They wouldn't let him have the surgery, and that was sort of a convenient excuse for him to get out. It all stems from, he gets traded. He comes back to Buffalo. He thinks that fans are still on his side. He gets booed. Of course they're not, because, he didn't say anything bad going out the door, but he said something. He was actually sort of, like respectful to the fans in Buffalo before that game last year. But after the game, when he got booed and when they were, really on him, that's when he sort of reacted petulantly. And we talked about that. So he comes back, whatever, how many months later, he's at full 100%. He sticks it to him and he revels in it. And you know what? I mean, okay, maybe that's a motivational tactic. Maybe he's like, okay, I've been there, done that. I can't think about what's going on in Buffalo now. I'm more concerned with the Vegas Golden Knights. And, now he's a villain here. So that's fine. But he's a good hockey player.
And he enjoyed sticking it up their rear end yesterday.
Right.
Look, he did the lap with the hands glowing like Russell Crowe. Look, he knew he was going to be motivated. Look, look, you can argue now that there's been a ton of arguments. Both teams have benefited from the trade, right? Buffalo gets rid of, I wouldn't call him a cancer, but a guy who clearly wanted to go, a guy who was tremendously talented, but they brought in other pieces around him, right? Alex took his fit in pretty well. I think Peyton Krebs still has a lot to give in terms of what they got out of him. Tage Thompson now has a chance to be their number one center, which he wouldn't have gotten necessarily if he was there. You look at the roster around them. Buffalo is an interesting team moving forward. I mean, they're not necessarily a playoff team yet, but I do think they're a team that should contend potentially for a spot, and they're a lot more fun to watch. And it's not necessarily a homegrown team, but they've gotten rid of the guy who, in essence, have had a adversarial relationship with the organization, rightfully so, given what happened in the past. He made some stupid comments. Part of that is hopefully learning from maturity. I think that the waters will eventually get smoothed down the road when more time has passed. Right now, it's still a fresh wound between the two sides, and both sides are reveling when either side doesn't take advantage of the opportunities.
I'll tell you, Jan, he's a villain forever here now. I mean, now it's, but because
he
Buffalo fans have a long memory that they won't forget. And, I'm not saying like down the line it'll calm a little bit, but right now it's fresh. But he's a villain here. But you're right. I mean, it was a beneficial trade for both teams. They got a first round pick. I think it was Kulich. They got Krebs and they got Tuck. But it was not just Eichel. Remember, they traded Ristolainen, they traded Reinhart, they traded Eichel. All three of them, they were poisoned by the fact that that was 2014, 2011, 2015 first round picks.
Yep.
They wasted the bulk of their careers with an organization that has their head up their rectum.
Mike, who's hated more?
Now, I think a lot of people have a lot of respect for what they're doing under Kevin Adams and Don Granato, and people are optimistic. But last night was a reminder because go ahead, Russ. You were going to say something.
Who's hated more, Jack Eichel or Scott Norwood?
Scott Norwood's not hated.
Okay.
Scott Norwood's not hated. A lot of people
Norwood didn't torch the organization before or after he left.
The thing was that. And just not to go back to Super Bowl 25, but Scott Norwood was money from 40 yards in. They asked him to kick a field goal that was well outside of his range because they had no other choice. But no, and with Eichel, this was all his choice. It was his choice to have that particular kind of surgery. It was his choice to want out of Buffalo. And, and it was his choice reacting badly after last year's loss to be petulant. Now I think everything, if the water is the well is poison, you can't unpoison it. So
I think eventually he'll apologize though, Mike. I do think as he grows older and matures, at some point in time, he'll come back and say the right thing, and it may not ease the anger of everybody, but I do think it'll probably mollify what's happened to a certain extent over time.
Well, he did make, and we'll get off of this, but he did make comments yesterday to Mike Harrington of the Buffalo News that were, I think politically were pretty right on. That were, I have respect for the organization. I respect my time here in Toronto or in Buffalo, but then he goes out and he does what he did yesterday. And I'm sorry, that's just the sort of showing up and being extremely happy that he stuck it to him. That doesn't get lost.
You score a hat trick, you have the opportunity to revel. Sorry. If he hadn't performed, he would have heard it from the entire crowd that he did nothing that game.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reality is, I mean, listen, he was hurt last year when he got there. He still took a while to get back. We all knew he would have a monster season. He's having a monster season. And if the Sabres had been okay with the surgery all along, I think he'd still be there. So I really do. I think that, so it's hard to sit there and say his decision to have the surgery, Mike, is not really that very fair. I mean, it's like, well, no, that was the medical call he was making on his own.
The organization did not want him to get the surgery,
right?
Because they would not be able to cover it under their insurance. It was deemed an experimental surgery, and that was the whole. And they weren't going to guarantee $40 million in salary on a surgery that they didn't believe was the right surgery. That was the whole thing. It was not only on top of all the antagonism. What's that?
I get that. But it's hard to that's not really his fault either. That's not his fault that the way the insurance works doesn't considers that the surgery experimental when, it had been used on other people. I mean, there could have been an argument made. The Sabres could have fought harder to say this is not experimental as you're saying.
They could have. That's a good point. They could have.
I mean, and gotten that. I feel like they could have gotten past that insurance thing. I really do. There's enough cases of people who've had the surgery that were okay. And I just think that the idea, it's not like the first time it's ever been done. It wasn't completely. It was just different for hockey players.
But Eck, you know what the underlying thing was? The underlying thing was they wanted to trade him, and they were afraid of what his trade value would be if he got this surgery and it didn't work out. That was a big thing for them.
Well, that's true too. Yeah, for sure. But but that really, again, is that really on Eichel? I mean.
No, that's not on Eichel at all. I
don't think any of this is really on Eichel. To sit there and because from all indications I talked to, people I talked to, he was perfectly willing to stay a Buffalo Sabre for his career. He didn't hate being a Buffalo Sabre.
No, but it turned, Eck. It up until probably
it turned when they wouldn't let him do what he wanted to for his.
It turned before then, Eck. He wanted out of the year before when Kruger was coach, and that was one of the motivations. Joe Yerdon told us this. That was one of the motivations why they went out and got Taylor Hall, because he wanted out, and he didn't think the team was going in the right direction. And then they go out and make all the moves that they did with Taylor Hall and a few other players, Eric Stahl and a few other players, and it was a big fat failure. So he wanted out because he sees Austin Matthews winning Hart trophies and Rocket Richard trophies, who's basically his contemporary in USA hockey. Now, Toronto's not had playoff success, but at least they've made the playoffs. Buffalo hasn't made the playoffs since 2011. Right. So he just saw himself wasting his career in Buffalo, and I get that.
That was the reason he left.
Let's switch to another big failure, and that is the Edmonton Oilers, who lose last night 7-2 to the Carolina Hurricanes.
We're on Michael Jello's greatest hit show right now.
Gee, who had a great night in goal for the Edmonton Oilers? Oh, wouldn't that be Jack Campbell? I mean, come on, guys.
When you buy, the difference between buying a penny stock and buying a 401k, this is the reality here is, Campbell is a 5-year investment.
Oh, what you're saying is Campbell is Twitter, and his stock is in the crapper right now.
Yeah, but people aren't stopping going to Twitter. People are still going to Twitter no matter what you say.
The team is in turmoil. Without Evander Kane now, you're picking on their lowest moment when they're trying to probably recoup and figure out what the hell they're going to do without Evander Kane. Could Campbell play better? Yeah, he could play better, but like, come on.
Mike,
He's
look, I have Campbell in 2 of my leagues, so trust me, I'm cursing every minute of the day right now. But that defense in front of him last night was brutal.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I mean, absolutely brutal in front of him. He didn't play particularly well. He sure as heck didn't get helped by the guys on the ice that night. No. They were horrific last night in terms of their own zone play again. And that's the problem with Edmonton. We complain all we want about the goalies, and Skinner's played better. He didn't have a particularly great night the other night. But unless you get much better play in front of them defensively, and that includes the forwards as well coming back, it's not going to matter who you put between the pipes.
But Jan, I mean, that's been okay. That's been the reality of the Edmonton Oilers for as long as I can remember, is the fact that they've got McDavid and
right. And here's the thing. Here's the other reality of the Edmonton Oilers, and you know, Mr. Campbell. He's 1.43% into his contract. Okay, we've seen 1.43% of this is not a really accurate sample size of how this signing is going to be. And secondly, it's not about Campbell having a 2.06 goals against average for the Edmonton Oilers. It's about making big saves at big times, and that's what it's always been. That's why, you know, they could get by with Smith, because Smith was actually a pretty good big save at big time goalie at times. And that's why Koskinen wasn't, you know. Right, but they don't need Campbell to be perfect. They just need Campbell to be good at the right time.
I know that, but this is the problem, and this was the thing that everybody ignored when we were talking about Jack Campbell being signed by Edmonton in the summer. Last year, his first full season as a starter, everybody says, "Oh, he made the All-Star team. He must be one of the best 10 goalies in the league."
Yeah. Nobody was saying that.
No, but a lot of people were. All the people were.
I never heard that.
Well, we don't pay attention to you, Eck, when it comes to goalies anymore. So,
but my point was he was arguably the second best goaltender in the first 2 months of the season last year. October and November, they had that ridiculous month in November where I don't think they lost the game. His stats were only eclipsed by Shesterkin in the league. He had like a .940 save percentage. From that point on, he was a below average goaltender. Yeah. And I'm saying, which Jack Campbell
he wasn't. We've been through this so many times, Mike. He was a great goaltender in the last month of the season. He was a great goaltender.
Jesus Christ.
We've been through this. We went through this statistically.
I know, and you're wrong. You were wrong.
We did all the stats.
You were wrong then, and you're wrong now.
No, we did all this. We went through it. Remember?
You know what, Mike? When Matt Murray actually plays again, we'll compare.
I mean, the reality is, like, you know, he's still a better option than Murray or probably Samsonov, you know, like, and it's like, but at the end of the day,
playing, the other two guys aren't even playing.
Exactly.
That's an unfair comparison. That you're saying a guy's injured, so you can't make the comparison. Look, Campbell has been great. The problem
one game.
The bigger issue with Campbell, as Mike knows, is between his ears. Once Campbell gets in a slump, he has a hard time mentally getting himself out of the slump. It's a domino effect, as Eck likes to say.
Like, when's Matt Murray going to play his second game? When is that going to happen?
Maybe
Mike,
tomorrow.
You're comparing apples and oranges from an injury perspective. Look, Campbell, on the face of it, is a better goalie. There's no question. Toronto didn't want to pay him the $5 million a year, partly because they didn't want to pay $5 million a year based upon their salary cap situation. Edmonton needed what they felt was a number one goalie. The problem is when Campbell is successful, he's usually successful for a decent run. But when he starts to hit the skids, that skid just keeps going down the mountaintop.
Yeah, but you know what? Instead of getting a Schwinn, the Leafs end up with a Huffy.
Yeah. And, you know, and Edmonton has another goalie now that's very good. So the reality is they can let Campbell work his way through this. Like, they can allow Campbell to work his way through this without missing the playoffs, where Toronto,
can we wait until Matt Murray makes 6 or 7 starts before we break out the shovel?
That'll be the end of the year.
Bury him.
It'll be 2025. Mike. I mean, we don't even know.
Okay, he's coming back this week.
Yeah, Cave Stars also was healthy at the beginning of the season. You know, I mean, the reality is, like, let's just, like, come on. It doesn't. And you, of all people, man, you always talk about goalies getting hurt as a big problem. If this was any other goalie, any other situation.
And they had Samsonov, who has no history of injuries, of course, until he plays for Toronto, and then he hurts his knee.
No, he's had some injuries, nothing major.
Yeah, no, I mean, Vanacek played a lot in Washington because Samsonov was hurt.
Well, now Vanacek's going to have to play a lot more now.
Yep. Well, Akira Schmid played yesterday.
We do need to talk about the biggest story.
Right now, because Vanacek got hurt last night.
Let's get to the big story, please.
The biggest story in hockey is the fact that after the Flyers lost, John Tortorella left the building with a backpack. He didn't go to the post game. He sent Bradshaw instead. Nobody knows why. The Flyers aren't talking about it. And if you remember, with just his two-answer press conference a couple of years ago at Columbus, he got fined $25,000. So I don't know what you get fined for just not showing up at the press conference. And we don't know what the reasons are. We don't know if there are any reasons.
That's the vet.
Bradshaw didn't know why.
He had to go to the vet.
It is. I'm gonna play a little devil's advocate on this one. Okay.
Uh-huh.
I have some connections to the Flyers world, obviously. And no one has told me this, but no one has denied this either. Because I threw a theory about just a couple people there. First of all, Tortorella doesn't do anything by accident, as we know.
No.
Shaw knows what happened. All right.
Probably.
The Flyers know what happened. This is their way of making putting the players on edge a little bit. They're going to say he just left with a backpack, all pissed off, and this is all about keeping the players guessing what happened. But the Flyers themselves know what happened, and this was completely. This is a theory again.
It's a bad look. It's a bad look.
It's the bad look of it to media, sure, but he's not.
Everybody after the game was like, "What's going on here?"
But what if that's contrived? Russ? I mean, this whole thing. If you look at it, if you look at him, Tortorella goes to everybody. He says, brings the Flyers, like Shaw and the other coaches in the room. Says, "Listen, this is what's going to happen. I can't take. I wouldn't look like I'm totally pissed off. I'm just going to leave with the backpack. I'm not going to do anything. No one's going to know what happened, and we're going to let that go out there and see what happens." And
but what does that prove? I don't know what that proves.
What it does is, one, it takes the focus away from the way the team actually played, because the team was terrible against a bad team in Columbus, right? And they've been good. And two, it gets the players really. It puts them on edge. It puts that. It's a nerve-wracking, destabilizing thing, which is what Torts has been known to do before. Try to destabilize teams to bring them back, so they band together against him in a way and work.
But you know what this
feels contrived to me.
You know what this looks like, Eck? This looks like he's pissed off that he lost to his former team.
That's what he wants.
He doesn't want to face the press because he's ashamed.
But Tortorella's not. He's not.
But
Mike's not far from being wrong. That is the thought out there. That's the problem.
That is what he wants out there. Isn't that clear? I mean, he's not.
Why would you want that out there?
Cares about losing the Blue Jackets like that.
But why would
Torts? Who doesn't want to?
Because he's Torts, and this is how Torts operates.
Yeah, why would you want that? It makes you look like a petulant child. That's dumb.
He's always looked like a petulant child. Have you not seen the press conferences with Larry Brooks? I mean, seriously?
And all of that is put together in his mind. Like
he
the
goes
Larry
to
Brooks
the Mike Keenan School of Motivational Fury.
Yeah.
Who?
I'm serious. This is what this is what.
Oh, Mike Keenan. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right, Mike Keenan. Herb Brooks did crazy stuff like this. Like, this is something that.
Herb Brooks never did anything like this. Stop.
He did crazy things. Like,
on the ice with the players. Yeah. All I'm saying, Nick, is what Mike said is the prevailing thought for all media and a lot of fans, if not all fans, right now.
And don't you think?
So how does that help the team?
Well, here's a couple things. First of all, Tortorella is not like a rookie coach throwing a fit and leaving just because he lost the game. I mean, to think that if that is actually what's happening, then Torch should be put away, right? Like, I mean, this is it's ludicrous. Like, he doesn't have. It's not like he lost the season, right? How this helps the team is it again takes the pressure off the players, puts it onto him, and because. He's all about, especially with young players, he's all about young players not being under pressure. You've heard the kind of things he said about Cam York and things like that. He's been like super nice about that, right? So he's like been kind of like, and also allows the fans to talk about something else, allows everybody to get away from the fact the Flyers have not played well for besides the St. Louis game there, where St. Louis really was terrible. They haven't played well for a couple weeks now, like from the beginning of the season when they looked like they were a good team. This is clearly a ploy. It's like it's just not even.
Yeah, I don't think it's helpful. I don't.
That's a debate. Like, you can debate that, like whether or not.
Here's the other part of it. So today the Flyers have a day off. And then now you've built this up where he has to talk to the media before the game with Claude Giroux coming in on Saturday, which now he's not going to want to talk about Claude Giroux. He's not going to want to talk about why he left. He's not. So you tell me as a Flyers PR person how you're going to handle all this.
Well, no, this from a Flyers PR perspective, it's awful. It's awful. Like those guys have a hard job because they've got to deal with us and people like that wanting. But, but from Tortorella's, he doesn't care. Tortorella's not like here to make the media happy. Like he's not here to make.
No, but it's the fans. You have to do some things for the fans. And right now, the fans didn't like what he did. I could tell you that. Yeah,
and well, it was interesting on Twitter. There were some people like, I don't blame him. I saw that too.
I'm sure you're going to see some of that. Sure.
They're like, he should have done that. They're not showing up. Whatever. I don't blame him for doing that. And other people are saying, he's just trying to. I'm not the first person to have this theory. Obviously, the people.
You realize if you're the league, you have to come down heavy on this because you can't let him do this again.
What do you mean?
He can't just all of a sudden decide to stick out a post game.
You're the league. Okay, you're the league.
You're the league.
Yeah. I mean, you pay. You pays a $50,000 fine. He's making how much is he making?
They're gonna have to do something. They have to because they can't let him.
Yeah, I mean they don't have to though. I mean they will.
No, they have to.
The league will end up doing something also.
They will.
They can't allow. They know he's the outlier. They know that they can't. That you're going to allow Bruce Cassidy or Jim Montgomery or somebody else to walk out of press conferences and then say to the league, "Well, you didn't find Torts, so you can't find me."
Right. No, they'll find him. And he'll pay $50,000 or whatever it'll be, which is a lot of money, no matter how you slice it. But it goes to the Players Association or whatever it goes to,
Now,
or the retirement fund or whatever it is. So. I mean, at the end of the day, he made a calculation last night that $50,000 was worth it.
Yeah, the SPCA. Okay, I want to touch on this because.
But actually, the bigger story of that game is Werenski. I mean, we got that. That's the big.
Yeah, we talked about it. Go ahead.
No, I mean that is like hugely important. I mean, like that.
Sure.
This puts Columbus into the Berard sweepstakes.
I don't think it does.
I think it does. I agree with that.
I don't think it does.
I think it does because he is the most important person on that team. Clearly,
he is, but they have David Juracek, who will definitely get in the lineup. I don't think he should replace him, but they also are probably a better team than what they started the season as, Eck, and they played without Werenski before. Like they've had to do this before.
For stretches, they have, but back then they used to have
2 years ago he was out for the whole season practically.
Well, they had Seth Jones too at that point.
Yeah,
I mean it's like this. They don't have anything like that. Like they don't have that
Listen,
kind
of. Jake Bean is no slouch. Jake Bean played a great game yesterday.
But they already feel like they're a couple steps behind everybody else in the division, and it feels like this is just gonna knock it out. I mean, and that. Who knows? I mean, they might end up with Dylan Larkin, like Kevin's been talking about. They might end up with Bedard. I mean, they could. They're on the right track, but I think they might be. This might be the season that Columbus takes a step back now. I don't
think Yarmo will do it. I'll be surprised if he does that.
He won't try to do it. I agree with you.
Yeah,
he's not a tank. He doesn't have a tank mentality. There's no question about that. And in Columbus, that city doesn't like tanking, and that team. Yeah. That those fans won't come out if the team is awful. They have. But
actually, we do need to talk about the Coyotes, who are at 500.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to say this because yesterday Kevin said that he was getting comments from his followers that he should be more vociferous against Mike Agello because Mike Agello said that the Islanders I think they were 8th in the league at that point, and then they were middle of the pack. They got shut out by the Arizona Coyotes.
It's one game.
Shut out by the Arizona Coyotes.
One game. They're 6-6-1.
Yeah, it's Michael vindication day.
Has won 4 or 5 in a row. Cut it out, Mike.
Their offense blows.
They're a good team.
They have a great.
Islanders' offense have blown for a while. Oliver Wahlstrom has not panned out.
They have a great goaltender.
Yeah.
They have a good defense. They have an average offense.
I thought Wahlstrom should stay there.
So you're stating what we already know. Tell me something we don't know. Seriously,
I have to accentuate.
Barzal has stepped up. Anders Lee has played well. Palmieri has started to wake up a little bit. The bigger issues is you've gotten sporadic performance out of Boulevardier, and Wahlstrom is clearly not panned out. To a certain extent, it's what you want him to be right now. But with that blue line and with Sorokin between the pipes, they're a tough team to play, as my team, who blew a 2-goal lead in the third period against them, found out a couple of days ago. Oh, wait, they beat the Rangers 2 days ago. Clearly not a crappy team there, Michael.
They're not. The Rangers are one of the top teams in the league. The reality here is, and they will be. I mean, they will be. They won't be 1/10 of the season in, where we are now. But right now it's way too early to
say whatever you want, Mike. Arizona is not a bad team. I know this. The stadium situation, the arena situation stinks. They've gotten really good performance out of. They've got great performance out of Vejmelka. They've gotten really good performance out of Lawson Krause this year. You see what Clayton Keller can do. Shane Gostisbehere has resurrected his career being out of Philadelphia the last year.
Gostisbehere is going to be an all-star this year.
Moser has played very well on the blue line for them. I mean, they clearly are not a great team, but they're not a horrible team, and they're not a bad team to watch play, because I watched the game against the Rangers in Arizona. It was a fun game to watch.
They are fun. They are a fun team. I agree with you. I mean, the thing that they do that every team like them has to do is play fast. We've talked about this before. They play fast. And if you play fast, you can do things. That's what Seattle's doing now. It's the same thing that and that's why Montreal's having some success.
What Gostisbehere has done is he's increased the number of teams that will be interested in trading for him at the deadline, because he's not going to be kept.
I don't think so.
You know what? I would have said that a couple months ago. Given what he's meant to that organization and what that's done for his production, don't rule out them re-signing him. I would have said a couple months ago, but I would not be shocked if he ends up helping there.
Right, if they pay him, sure. But I don't. That organization isn't paying anybody right now. Nobody.
He's not going to be an $8 million defenseman. I mean, but here's the thing. So the reality of Shane Gostisbehere is there are two Shane Gostisbeheres, and Russ knows this very well. There is the Shane Gostisbehere that when he's playing well is an amazing locker room guy and just unbelievably positive, like the kind of guy that everybody wants to be around. He is happy and he's very positive towards everybody. He's a motivator with other people. He can, when he's on his game, he can pull a team out of the doldrums like he did when he first came to Philly. Like that in the beginning in Philly, that team was so bad in the locker room, it was miserable. He came in there and he was like this bright light in the locker room that everybody loved. When he's not on his game, he's the opposite direction. So he's one of these completely extreme. But right now, knowing how much on his game is, what he means to that locker room right now. They could keep him. They really could. I mean, if he keeps playing like this.
But Tyson Barrie looks like Tyson Barrie makes 4.5. He'll get 5.5.
Yeah,
that's what I think. Maybe even 6. Maybe 6.
You'd have to probably get around like 5.75 to 6.25 on a 6 or 7 year deal for them to keep.
Oh, he's not getting that. He'll get a D'Angelo contract. Nobody's trusting Shane Gostisbehere for more than.
If they give him an 8-year deal, he'll go for 5.5.
Right? Then you trade him and you re-sign him in the summer.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the smart thing to do. Now, the big news
about the problem is what Jan said is they may be better than what we said. We have to acknowledge that.
Well, yeah. I mean,
and without Chychrun also right now.
Chicago and Arizona are shooting themselves in the foot in terms of the Bedard sweepstakes.
Really?
Okay.
I mean, listen,
but as you know, finishing in last place is no guarantee that you're going to get the first overall.
Jan's exactly right.
That's the third pick guaranteed.
But think about it this way, especially since they changed things. I mean, an entire season of losing and the mentality of losing on your team versus a 20% chance at first round.
If there's a year to lose, it's when you have.
Yeah, but what a whole year of losing does.
But there's not a guarantee.
Let me finish my sentence. If there's a year to lose, it's when you have 4,700 people stuck into a college rink and nobody's seeing you when you're a joke. That's the year to lose.
Well, the 4,700 may be more than they were drawing beforehand, but we won't go there anyway. It's a much different atmosphere. Look, it's not ideal, but it's a different atmosphere, at least in the arena. And honestly, they're playing well enough that people might actually show up to go watch them these days, as opposed to what we saw in the past.
They're going to have to sit on the roof. There's only a limited
point
space.
I'm making right now, Mike, is just because you finish in last, it's not a guarantee you're getting the first overall pick. Look, if you were telling me if I stunk, I would get the first pick, lose as much as you can to get Bedard.
But just get the third pick, and that's still great.
It's not Bedard.
It doesn't matter.
You've got 3 guys in this draft.
You've got 3 potential franchise guys. You're going to get one of them.
And again, right now they're probably playing slightly over their head, but they're at least a fun team to watch.
And
I don't know if it's sustainable, but at least they don't look like they're stink on the ice and nobody wants to go there.
The responsibility of a good general manager, if you're Bill Armstrong or if you're Kyle Davidson in Chicago, is to kill these teams, is to prevent them from winning so you get a franchise player.
So Mike, what are you doing in this case then? So what are you going to do? What do you do if you're sitting Clayton Keller so he doesn't play?
Oh, you trade Gostisbehere as soon as you possibly can.
If you get an offer that's worthwhile, yes.
The way he's playing, you will.
Well, they got to trade. They're going to have to trade Chikrin first, so that's
Right.
that's
the thing.
And you see how well that's been going so far.
Well, yeah, I mean, he has to be healthy.
They're in
But
trouble.
That's their fault because they're holding out for a king's ransom. That's not the
Right.
the
But they're
league.
really in trouble with that. I'll tell you, I talked to somebody about the chicken thing yesterday. They're in trouble there way more than they're admitting, because the reality is that, after his what looked like a really subpar season last year, and now with what's going on now, his value is plummeting, and they really made a mistake by not making. From what I was told yesterday, someone said I still don't know exactly. I think it was Ottawa, but I still don't know exactly who they almost pulled the trade off with at the draft.
Probably Ottawa because they were heavy
It
into
feels
it.
like it was Ottawa from talking to people.
St. Louis.
You think it was St. Louis?
I think it was St. Louis.
No one will say for sure.
But, yeah,
but regardless, whatever that was, the person I talked to yesterday said they will never get close to that again. That's what they were saying. That whatever that offer was better than anything they're going to get now.
The big thing right now is because he had a setback with his wrist, he's got to get back in the lineup. He's got to play like he played before he got injured, and if he does that, then the value will skyrocket again. But right now, he's an injured player. He's chronically injured, and that's scaring people off, especially when you have to give up 4 first-round equivalents for a guy who can't stay healthy.
Right.
So,
and you're not going to have to give up 4 first round.
Well, that's what they wanted beforehand.
Yeah,
but
that's it. Cut that in half now.
The big story right now for Arizona is yesterday the Tempe City Council essentially passed the buck. I mean, it was couched as, oh, this is progress. No, they're putting it to a referendum next May, and basically that means that we'll find out the results of that plebiscite probably in 2025. The way they're counting votes in Arizona, but I'm sorry, I don't think the city of Tempe is going to be passing a referendum to basically give billions in tax money and what do you call it? A public. You know what I'm talking about. I'm drawing a blank here, but for infrastructure. Thank you very much.
Maybe they will once they count their votes. But anyway.
No, but you know what?
The whole thing of that area is really messed up.
Here's what I would say, Ek. I think if I'm the league, now that they know that next May it's either a thumbs up or a thumbs down, they're going to have to put a backup plan in place, because
they already do.
If there's a thumbs down in that vote, then they're going to have to be out of there quickly.
Yeah, from what I've heard, there is already a backup plan in place.
Yeah.
I think that plan is clearly Houston. I think that's clearly where it's going to go to. It's not going to be Quebec, unfortunately. Although
no, I hear it won't be Quebec either.
Quebec is a backup plan for another team should they fail. I've heard, but not that team. Maybe Ottawa, maybe another. There's maybe another team besides that. So there's but they're not going to try to mess the divisions up too much or anything like that. So they're going to try to keep that as best they can, and definitely not. No one's going to go to the West. They're not going to get Detroit or Columbus to agree to go to the Western Conference. So I mean, the reality is that's where Carolina.
No, Detroit fought to be in the East. They're staying there.
Oh yeah, no, Detroit did their time in the West basically.
Yeah.
Columbus did their time in the West. If they had to move anybody, I actually told it would be Carolina to the Western Conference, which is an interesting decision.
Kind of absurd.
It is absurd based on where they are, but they're not that far from Nashville. So the reality is, I mean,
they're not around the corner.
But the big what's
and
the
they're
big
clearly
problem?
not around the corner from Seattle, that's for sure.
Right. No, and the big problem with if you're Carolina and you're moving to the Western Conference is your television stuff, because like all your games are being started at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. So that's where that's why they don't want to move that team. That's why Detroit. Detroit is in the same boat. I mean, anybody in the Eastern time zone needs. That's why Nashville's in they're in Central time zone. So,
Now,
the other thing though we have to take into account and about this tanking thing is that Arizona with all these votes going on right now, with everything that's happening right now, there is a vibe that they want to play well right now to try to help these things. Because if they
I get it.
They're absolutely terrible right now while they're trying to get the stuff on. They'll never keep that team there.
Good. Because that team doesn't belong there anymore.
A team belongs there, but just a team belongs in that market if it's in the right place. I really do believe that. But they need the right stadium, and they need.
It's like a staging house for when you're trying to sell your house, and they bring in all the furniture and they bring in everything.
Right.
That's what they're gonna do.
Which is most of my house, because which is funny when people look at my house. Everything behind you that you see here, except for the arcade machines, was left here by the family before who tried to stage this. And they just didn't want to take it with them. We're like,
but in a staging house, Russ, that piano is made of cardboard.
Right, that's true.
Right. But this there are way other factors going on besides just trying to get a draft pick in Arizona. The Arizona draft pick is kind of low down the totem pole with what they need.
But this is the reality. Connor Bedard is a franchise saver.
But they don't have a franchise, Mike, if they don't do this the right way. They don't have it.
He gives you the possibility of saving that franchise. He is a Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews level talent, and that would override one season of sucking. I'm sorry. This is a loss. This is a lost season.
I'll give you an example that some fan base is going to hate, but I wrote about it back in the day, and I believe it for Bedard. It's the same thing when the Islanders got Tavares. It's the same factor because the Islanders were sinking as a franchise then, and they needed that player. Now, you could make an argument there's at least 3 franchises that need Bedard for sure.
For sure. No, there's no question. And and it would be great. We haven't seen that happen where, and I'll tell you, want to know somebody this is kind of crazy, but really laugh at this, a player that saved a franchise in a way was Sidney Crosby too. Because if you remember what was happening,
because they were going to move to West Virginia.
There were all kinds of issues before that happened.
Or Hamilton or something.
Yeah, and then of course they sucked for a couple more years, and they got Malkin and they got Fleury.
Well, that's the Pittsburgh way, unfortunately.
Yeah. You field an AHL team for a decade, and you'll be good. But yeah, that's what they did, and that's what the Leafs tried to do, and everybody's tried to do that. It's tricky, but yeah, I think that you have to look at so many more factors with Arizona than just what's going on the ice.
I wanted to get Jan's thoughts on the Rangers finally breaking out last night with an 8-2 win over the Red Wings. Is that more commentary on the Red Wings, or is that more the Rangers, getting on the straight and narrow?
I think it's a combination of both. So I'd say that the team as a whole has been better than what they've shown. But I will also say that there's a couple of things associated with it. So one, the lineup was a lot deeper last night. The return of Vitaly Kravtsov most certainly helped. Getting Ryan Carpenter out of the lineup, getting Ryan Reeves out of the lineup clearly helped in terms of the fourth line of Sammy Blais, Barclay Goodrow, and Julien Gauthier.
That was a good line.
Clearly was a much better fourth line for possession. If you look at kind of the possession they had yesterday compared to the last couple of games, the kid line being reunited was really good. The second line, Kravtsov actually had a pretty good game yesterday. Mika Zibanejad had a good game. Also, not having their fathers there didn't hurt because everybody loves playing in front of their parents. So really didn't hurt having the parents there. Lieber Hayek actually had a fairly decent game on the third pair. Ryan Lindgren coming back. You can see the comfortability factor between Adam Fox and Ryan Lindgren. I mean, clearly, no question. I mean, Fox was just phenomenal last night. Look, they've had no puck luck this year. Their shooting percentage has been horrible. But the thing that you saw last night was, one, north-south, not east-west, which is something they've been harping on. B, their forecheck was dominant, especially in the third period last night. And that's something that's been materially lacking on this team this year, is using defense to create offense, pinning opponents deep, taking advantage of opportunities. The talent is there. I mean, I don't think Igor Shesterkin's had a particularly great year either. He's been okay. One thing that concerned me last night that I wrote about is I think his puck playing ability this year has been way below what we've seen in the past. Even on the second goal last night, it was a rim around the boards that he misplayed, and Keandre Miller kind of turned it over, and he had a goal earlier in this year when he tried to play it.
When your confidence isn't sky high, that stuff happens to you.
Another thing about him that I noticed.
But again, overall, look, they're a good team. I mean, they have talent. My question to you is are they going to use this to propel themselves forward, or is this a one-game aberration? But in my opinion, Ryan Carpenter shouldn't be in the lineup every night. Ryan Reeves never should have been re-signed. I know people hate me saying it, but $1.75 million was an absolute waste, especially I could have had Tyler Mott, who would have been a much better fit. But if Sammy Blake can finally show what he did last night in terms of his skating ability, post-ACL tear, thank you, Slewfoot from PK Subban. But if Gauthier can go to the net like he did last night, and Goodrow is a guy you can plug up and down the lineup, that team becomes an awfully lot deeper than they have been for the last month of this since the season started.
I mean, I did watch it from the Detroit side here, and honestly, for a lot of that game, Husso was having a really good game. His defense stinks. I mean, the Detroit defense, they gave up so many high danger chances that it did make a few of the Ranger goals look ridiculous, like just too easy.
Russ, you know what we saw last night, and is that when the Rangers are playing well, their offense is so fast.
Yeah, no question.
And the defense that when they're not playing well, their offense isn't fast.
So if Galant's going to build the forechecking team, they're not going to score like this. But the minute you made those couple of other changes, you got goals out of Gauthier. You got, I think Goudreau may have had 2, right? I mean, Goudreau had a hell of a game. It was probably the best game he had as a Ranger. But they were still playing the Red Wings too. It's a little bit of both.
Jan, the pluses and minuses for Gallant, in your opinion. Like, do you think? Are you on the Gallant bandwagon still, Jan, or are you starting to sway?
So a couple of things. So there's a reason why his shelf life is 3 years. You can kind of see it. He defers a lot to his coaching staff. The whole thing as to why Zach Jones got scratched and not giving an answer, referring, basically maybe there was an injury or we have to speak to Gord Murphy. Just answer the damn question. Stop deferring. It's a BS response. It's unfair to the media. It's unfair to the fan base. You want to just say, look, the guy didn't play well. We made a decision. That's why we sat him. But deferring and making your coaching staff answer to it is kind of ridiculous. I'm not a big fan of the system that he runs all the time. Look, they played well last year. They're a good team this year. Whether or not they go as far this year, we all know the players are a complete crapshoot when you get there. The problem is right now they're carrying 23 guys and they don't have a lot of cap space. When they get healthy, Ryan Carpenter or Reeves, my expectation is Carpenter is going to be attempted to pass through waivers because they're going to want to try to clear a couple $1 million up to use at the end of the year. They may need a left-handed D-man down the road if Hayek is not the guy, because Zach Jones clearly has him in, and Russ can attest with Braden Schneider hasn't been as good this year as he was last year down the stretch. Now, maybe Matthew Robinson is the answer. He's been injured right now in the minors. Gustav Rydell could be an answer on the fourth line. I do think they're going to need to acquire another blue liner down the stretch to kind of bolster that blue line, which is sort of kind of what they did last year, though Justin Braun wasn't the answer. They're going to need somebody a lot better to kind of carry on that third line.
Right, either. To be fair, I
agree. But he was going to be a third line guy there. You weren't going to play him above the third line. And look, the guy, in my opinion, who has not taken a step forward. I don't think Condre Miller's had a great year. Great preseason. Yeah. Haven't seen the growth out of him this year. He's still learning how to play the position, but he hasn't been as good as I thought he'd be.
No, he was good at the beginning. I think he's sort of stuck in the mud right now. I agree with that.
I mean, here's the thing. Wasn't the plan originally to move Gauthier?
It was, but now it may not be.
Gauthier is a guy who's a scorer who hasn't been able to score. Generated a ton of chances, but in my opinion, on the fourth line, if he can be that forecheck guy with Blais and Goudreau and chip in periodically and use his speed and his size to create opportunities and wear guys down, I don't care if he's not going to score 20 goals. Score me 10 goals, but be the guy who can be on the fourth line. Look, I don't think Jimmy Vesey is a first liner, but last night he filled that role nicely, creating opportunities for Zibanejad on his second goal and Kreider.
Yeah, Vesey can fill the role for sure. Even though long term you kind of wonder, like in the playoffs, that might be a problem. Gauthier is a bit of fool's gold, but he does have a skill level that just hasn't come through.
Yeah,
and you can use
there
him
are teams that are interested in him. I mean, if you want to move cap space, there are teams that want him.
And Leroy Hayek, I don't care if he had a good game.
If there were teams that wanted him back, they would have claimed him when he was first put on waivers to go down originally.
Well, no one's going to want him.
30-day window where he doesn't require waivers to go down, but we're rapidly approaching in about another week and a half or so where they're going to have to make a decision as to whether or not they send him down without exposing him to waivers, or B, if he's going to stick, he's going to stick, which is why I think Carpenter is going to be the odd man out.
Carpenter will be the guy down.
But clearly no one's going to want him without the Rangers taking some cap space back. So that's the issue. Like,
it's $800,000. That's nothing.
I know.
That's nothing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of teams that have enough cap room that could easily fit him in. The Rangers and about 6 or 7 others are not in that area right now, but there are enough teams that could fit him in very easily under the cap. Arizona, I'm surprised they didn't take a flyer on him originally when he went through waivers.
Yeah, I thought he'd make a little more than that. That's a really good point. I take that back. Yeah, you're right. Wow.
It looks like Freddie Anderson's on IR, according to Timothy.
And Laurent Brasseau did not get claimed off of waivers, which again, it's like there are so many teams out there that need a goaltender, but it's almost like waivers in my mind is almost like sort of like an insider trading type of game where you know what I'm saying? It's like these guys. It makes no sense that this guy wouldn't be claimed. But he doesn't get claimed because I think there's sort of an unspoken, you don't touch my guy, I won't touch your type.
Are you using the C word there, Michael? Michael, are you using the C word there, Michael?
Brett Butler, collusion? Yeah.
That's the word I'm talking about. Yeah, that word. Andre Dawson, 1987. Yeah, that word.
Yeah. The only thing I'll say is, and I know Kevin bristled at this, but I still think it's true. There's more injuries this year than we've ever seen. Brutal, major injuries to major players. Like, there's so many now.
But is the question is there a reason for it? Like, is it an aberration, or is there something going on that's causing it?
They had a shorter training camp. They went right into preseason, and that could be the reason.
I'll tell you something we got to keep an eye on is the Berube watch, I was told, which I hate to talk about.
I tweeted that like 3 days ago after they lost. I feel that's real.
They did win yesterday, so
they won.
They won 5-3 last night against San Jose. Look, Binnington has not been particularly good. Ryan O'Reilly has gotten off to an absolutely horrific start this year.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me, those are the two keys as to why that team has struggled. Buchnevich was hurt. He missed a little bit of time, which didn't help them necessarily. The blue line has been exceedingly up and down. Losing Perunovic actually was a guy you counted on, so they really haven't replaced him in that role either.
And would Trotz go there? That's the question. Would Trotz go to St. Louis?
Yeah, Berube's
they're not an original 6 team.
Well, here's the thing about Berube. A couple things that I was told.
Montreal's not replacing their coach, and the Rangers aren't replacing their coach, and Detroit's not going anywhere, and Boston's not going anywhere. So it really leaves one, and I don't think Toronto's making a move right away. No, but Chicago, in terms of teams that might, I don't think Chicago. He's not going to Chicago. That's why I didn't include that.
Well, let's hear what
Toronto would be the only one he would go to to have a shot at the playoffs.
Go ahead.
So just the thing on Berube, I was told the next 2 games are going to be the determining factor. They play Vegas and Colorado. All right, so they had to win last night. I mean, if they didn't win last night, that they were done for, right? So if they can show that they've got it, I mean, Berube's just one of the nicest people in the world, and and it's tough to see. Like he's remember how honest he was, Russ? Like he's just like,
oh yeah,
he was crazy honest that he would come into the media room sometimes and just start talking.
Yeah, if you get him on a show, he's completely honest all the time.
He would sit at a table with us and talk about what he thought about players off the record.
Yeah,
in blatant forms, like in just ridiculous. Like, and he's not necessarily like the greatest motivator in the world.
No, he does have a shelf life.
Yeah, and I think that this could be it. I mean, for him, I really do, and it sucks because I think he he's one of those guys who go somewhere like a Laviolette and do well someplace else. But I think that's something you really have to look for this weekend. I think, in a big way. Those 2 games, and of course, Claude Giroux returns to Philadelphia tomorrow. That'll be an interesting one.
Won't answer it.
And
I'm sure. I mean,
Aaron Ekblad returns for Florida and gives them another offensive weapon on the blue line because just what that team needs right now.
You're right there you go.
I think Spencer Knight is starting the next 2 games. I think I saw also.
Yeah, I'm not shocked at that. He's having a good year.
Again, we talked about this before. Look, he's got tremendous talent. He's clearly their future number 1. The only question is how quickly was that future? And look, Bobrovsky's making a boat ton of money for a lot more years. So
but they didn't care about
not
that.
Going to be an easy one.
I go back to an interview I did with McCabe about a year and a half ago where 2 years ago. It was 2 years ago before Knight got in the league, and he was just like, what Spencer wants to do, that's what we're going to do. So when he spoke about it in those terms, I knew he was their next goalie, and it was just a matter of time. And then based on what he got paid this year, coming into this year, you knew he was the next goalie.
No, I mean, he is so much their goalie that I was told that they could have had Chychrun if they had put him into a trade.
Yeah.
and they didn't. They wouldn't. So
the
like
problem
when
is
you won't hear about
Bobrovsky's got 3 more years at 10 million each after this season. 4 more years, I'm sorry, after this year.
4 more years, yeah. I mean, he's a tough one. And also the other thing about him is this. I mean, like if you are a contending team, you got 2 goalies there. I mean, at the end of the day, you're paying a lot for it, but you do have 2 goalies. So
Right.
I mean, Bobrovsky had a hell of a year last year, like almost a Vezina year last year, and people just didn't really pay attention to it. He had more wins than any goalie I think has had in the last like 10 years.
But they lost in the playoffs, and that's all that matters with that team.
But
right?
not him.
Look, they made a big move to get Giroux last year. From a good news, quote unquote, Hornqvist is 5.3 mil. I just saw comes off the books. If the cap actually rises a little bit, right? They have, if you look at their top 6, Barkov is under contract, Kachukka's under contract, Reinhardt's under contract, Bennett's under contract, Verhaeghe's under contract, Lundell is there, Balcers is a guy who they may try to keep next year. And they're doing this also with Duclair being hurt, who's going to be back eventually. So they have enough cap room, other than Gudas, who they have to resign, that they can carry Bobrovsky. They may say, you know what? I'm spending $14 million between my 2 goalies. I don't care because I got all these other assets locked up that I don't have a big issue.
They could win the top 20 goalies in the league. You know, it's like interesting. And when you look at it, they are 2 really. This is not true at all. Okay, I'm gonna tell you, it's not true. There is no way in hell. I mean, you can say maybe you can make judgment you want to make on Philly fans being classless or classy, whatever. First of all, Flyers fans are different than Eagles fans. I've said this many times before. People always think of the Philly, the Eagles fans and all, and Flyers fans are total. It's just a different world. For whatever reason, and Giroux is absolutely loved in the city. I mean,
now will Sports Talk Radio decide to try and call him a failure because he didn't win in his era? Yeah, they probably will, but the fans won't.
Yeah, right. The fans won't at all. I mean, and I mean, the reality was like last year, I was, a friend of mine sent me a Giroux jersey from the Panthers Giroux jersey. So when they were in the playoffs, I was walking around with the Giroux jersey. I went to Wawa rent locally here, and no less than 5 people said, "Oh man, good luck for Claude. Good for him. You should get." That's where they're at. People are 100% behind us. That's all the time we have for today, folks. Hope you're staying dry wherever you are. We aren't here, man. We're getting pounded here. Russ, you picked the right weekend to leave town. We're getting the remnants of the hurricane here.
Yeah, but he's going to drive back through that crap. So.
I do have to drive back Saturday morning.
You'll be all right by then.
Ooh, you're going right into the teeth of it, Ross. If you get here, then
really.
Well, just
rain tomorrow morning also.
Just one note. Boreas Salming will be at the Hall of Fame induction ceremonies at Scotiabank Arena tonight with the group of Swedes, including the Sedins and Daniel Alfredsson. And like I said, I think he'll get a rousing and lengthy ovation from the Leaf fans.
Oh man, me growing up, my Boreas Salming thing. Growing up was Gene Hart when he was the announcer for the Flyers, famous Gene Hart thing. Had this saying. You remember the saying, Russ, at all? Do you remember this?
I never heard Gene Hart on the radio.
Oh, you never heard? Really? That's crazy. Never. All right. So anyway, Gene Hart, whenever a player would take the puck from their own zone and flip it up into the air high to get it out, like on like loop air type flip, not icing, but like flip it up high into the air. It was always, I don't know, Ben Wilson clears it a la Boreas Salming. That's what we would always, for years and years and years, it was always a la Boreas Salming because Boreas was famous for that little flip out, flipping it over the player's heads. And one last thing about Giroux too. The other night, did you guys see the goal he scored on the flip-in goal? That it was like he did it from between the blue line and center line.
I didn't see it.
He dumped the puck in, and he has tried to do this. We've seen him try it many times, Russ, where he tries to flip it so it bounces on the goalie and they miss it. And he did it. It succeeded. Like he actually did it the other night.
Okay.
And I've seen him try. I think we joked about how many times we've seen him do it. It never worked, but that's why I had to tell you that it actually worked.
Okay.
And what was crazy is the announcers had no idea. Like, that's just lucky for him. But like, they had no idea that is something that he tries to do all the time. He tries to turn the puck on its side and bounce it in. It's a great move. Anyway, remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you all on Monday.